Welcome to Tale by Granny, where real lives unfold like whispered secrets in the dark. Tonight I'll tell you my own story. A story I never thought I'd live to tell. A story about love, betrayal, and the cruel silence between a mother and her son. It all started one quiet evening. The rain was falling outside my kitchen window, tapping against the glass like a warning. I was making tea when my phone buzzed. It was a call from an unknown number in Florida. My heart froze for a second. My son, Daniel, lived there with his wife, Claire. We hadn't spoken in weeks. I hesitated, but something deep inside told me to answer. A woman's voice came through. "Is this Mrs. Cooper?" she asked softly. "Yes," I replied. "This is Nurse Morgan from St. Peter's Hospital. I think you should come. It's about your son." My cup slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. I could barely breathe. What happened? "What's wrong with him?" I whispered. She paused. "Your son's in the ICU. You should come as soon as you can." Everything went silent after that. I didn't even remember how I packed. I booked the earliest flight to Florida. On the plane, my hands trembled as I stared out the window. Memories of Daniel's childhood flashed through my mind. His first steps. His laughter, the day he married Claire. She was beautiful, smart, confident. Maybe too confident. I trusted her completely. Maybe that was my mistake. When the plane landed, the air felt heavy and damp. I rushed to the hospital, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it. The nurse recognized me immediately and led me down a long, cold hallway. Every step echoed like a countdown. When I reached the ICU door, I stopped. Through the glass window, I saw my son. My Daniel, pale, fragile, surrounded by machines breathing for him. I pressed my hand against the glass, tears streaming down my face. "Oh my God, what happened to you, my boy?" I whispered. The nurse put a gentle hand on my shoulder. "He's been here for 2 days. Severe internal infection. Septic shock. He kept asking for his wife before he lost consciousness." His wife, Claire. I turned to the nurse. "Where is she? Where's Claire?" The nurse hesitated. "She hasn't come. We tried contacting her, but she didn't answer." I felt a wave of disbelief. My daughter-in-law, the woman Daniel loved, hadn't shown up. My mind refused to believe it. Maybe she didn't know. Maybe she was on her way. But when I opened social media later that night in the hospital waiting room, I saw something that turned my blood cold. There she was, Claire, dressed in white, champagne glass in hand, smiling on a luxury yacht under the Florida sun. The caption read, "Living life to the fullest. No regrets." I stared at my phone, unable to blink. The woman in that picture looked nothing like the wife of a dying man. Music, laughter, sunlight. The world around her was alive while my son lay, trapped in a mechanical rhythm of beeps and breaths. I zoomed into the photo, behind her, the reflection of a man's arm draped around her waist. My hands began to shake. I wanted to scream, to throw that phone across the room, but the sound of Daniel's monitors kept me still. I could not break, not here, not now. Hours passed in a blur. Nurses moved around, checking IV lines and adjusting monitors. I sat by Daniel's bed, holding his cold hand, whispering words he couldn't hear. "Mom's here, sweetheart. You're not alone. You'll come back to me. I promise you will." Around midnight, I heard a soft voice behind me. "Mrs. Cooper?" It was Nurse Morgan again. "You should rest. There's a lounge down the hall." I shook my head. "No, I'll stay here." She gave me a look of pity and understanding, the kind you give someone who's been hurt too deeply to fix. By dawn, I made a decision. I would find Claire. I needed to look her in the eyes and ask her why. I left the hospital, the Florida heat pressing down like a punishment. Her yacht photo had been tagged at the Miami marina. It took me 2 hours to get there, every minute tightening the knot inside my chest. The marina was a world of luxury, white boats, expensive perfume, people laughing over mimosas. I felt out of place, my black clothes soaked with sweat and grief. And then I saw her, Claire. She was standing on the deck of a massive white yacht, her golden hair blowing in the wind, a glass of champagne in one hand. A man stood beside her, tall, tan, and far too close. My vision blurred. I walked closer, each step heavier than the last. When she finally saw me, her smile froze. "Mrs. Cooper?" she said, her voice trembling just slightly. "Yes," I hissed. "It's me. Where were you last night when your husband was dying in the ICU?" Her eyes darted away. I didn't know. No one called me." I laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "Don't lie. The hospital called you. They called you twice. And you were too busy drinking on a boat. The man beside her stepped forward. Hey, calm down, lady. I glared at him. You have no idea who you're defending. That man you're with? Her husband is fighting for his life right now. For a moment, guilt flickered in her eyes. Then, just as quickly, it vanished. Daniel always gets sick, she said coldly. He'll be fine. He just needs rest. Rest? I whispered. He's on life support, Claire. Silence. Only the waves crashing against the yacht answered me. I turned to leave, but before I did, I said the words that had been burning inside me since I saw that photo. If he dies, you'll have to live with this forever. As I walked away, I didn't see the tears she wiped from her cheek. But I also didn't see the fear in her eyes. The kind that said she was hiding something much darker than indifference. I drove back to the hospital in silence, the road stretching endlessly before me. Every turn of the tires echoed in my head, mingling with the sound of Daniel's weak heartbeat from memory. I wanted to believe that confronting Claire would bring some relief, but instead, it filled me with more dread. There was something in her eyes when I mentioned Daniel. Something cold, calculating, almost afraid. When I reached the ICU, the nurse rushed toward me. Mrs. Cooper, your son had a rough night. We had to stabilize him again. I felt the blood drain from my face. I pushed through the glass doors, my heart pounding. Daniel looked even worse, paler, thinner. The machines around him working harder, faster. His chest rose and fell weakly under the weight of the ventilator. I sat beside him again, tears burning my eyes. Hold on, sweetheart, I whispered. Your mom's here. You're going to be okay. I stroked his hair gently, remembering the little boy who used to run into my arms after school, laughing with scraped knees and stories to tell. How did it come to this? The doctor entered quietly, clipboard in hand. Mrs. Cooper, can we talk outside for a moment? I nodded and followed him. In the hallway, he looked at me with the kind of professional sympathy that makes you brace yourself. Your son's condition is very serious. The infection spread faster than we expected. We've done everything possible, but his body isn't responding well to treatment. My throat closed. Are you saying he might not make it? He sighed. We'll keep fighting, but you should prepare yourself. Prepare myself? How does a mother prepare to lose her child? That night I refused to leave his side. I talked to him for hours, told him about home, about the garden he planted with his father, about how proud I was of him. And at one point, just when I thought he couldn't hear me, his fingers twitched. His eyelids fluttered. My heart leapt. Daniel? I whispered, leaning closer. It's me, Mom. Can you hear me? His lips moved slightly. I leaned even closer until I heard the faintest whisper. Claire. It was the first word he'd spoken in days. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Yes, Claire. What about her? He struggled to breathe, his chest rising unevenly. She did this. Before I could ask what he meant, the monitors began to beep rapidly. The nurses rushed in, shouting for help. I was pulled back as they worked to stabilize him again. I stood there frozen, Daniel's words echoing in my mind like a curse. She did this. When they finally got him stable, I stepped out into the hallway, my knees shaking. If Daniel was right, if Claire had done something, then this wasn't just neglect. It was something far worse. I pulled out my phone and looked again at her social media posts, photos, videos, laughter. But as I scrolled deeper, one video caught my attention, posted just hours before Daniel collapsed. They were at a party. Claire was laughing, handing Daniel a drink. The caption read, "To new beginnings, let's forget the past." My breath caught. Something about that drink, something about the timing. My instincts screamed that this wasn't coincidence. Daniel hadn't just fallen sick. Someone made sure he would never wake up. I couldn't sleep that night. The hospital lights flickered dimly through the blinds, casting shadows that moved like ghosts on the walls. Daniel's words haunted me. She did this. The more I thought about it, the more it all began to make sense. His sudden illness, her absence, her cold indifference, and that suspicious video. At dawn, I made a decision. I was going to find out what really happened. The next morning, I went to the nurse's station. Can I see the doctor's notes and lab results for my son? I asked. The nurse hesitated. I'm sorry, ma'am, but only the spouse can access full medical records. My stomach twisted. Spouse? I repeated bitterly. The spouse hasn't even visited. She lowered her voice. I know, ma'am, but the system's rules are strict. I nodded politely, but inside, I was already planning my next move. I would talk to Claire myself. One more time, face to face. And I wouldn't leave until I had answers. I went to her apartment that afternoon. The luxury building stood tall and cold, overlooking the ocean. The lobby guard recognized her name immediately. "She's by the pool, ma'am," he said with a smile. Unaware of the storm brewing inside me, there she was, lounging on a chair, sunglasses on, music playing, a cocktail in hand. I walked up slowly, every step fueled by anger and heartbreak. She looked up lazily when she saw me. "Mrs. Cooper," she said, setting her drink down. "I told you Daniel will be fine." I cut her off. "He said your name, Claire, before he lost consciousness. He said you did this." Her face went pale for a second, just a second, before she recovered. "He's delirious," she said quickly. "He doesn't know what he's saying." I stepped closer. "Then explain the video, Claire. The one where you're handing him a drink. The one captioned, 'To New Beginnings.' What was in that glass?" Her lips tightened. "Just whiskey, why?" "Because right after that, my son collapsed." Her hands trembled, and for the first time, she looked scared. I could see it, the crack in her mask. I leaned closer. "If you hurt him, I will find out, and you will pay for it." I turned to leave, but then she said something that froze me in my tracks. "You don't know everything, Mrs. Cooper." I stopped. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then smirked faintly. "Ask Daniel about the deal. He wasn't the perfect son you think he was." I spun around, confused. "What deal?" But she only smiled, hiding behind her glass. "You'll find out soon enough." Her words echoed in my mind as I left. What deal? What could she possibly mean? My son wasn't perfect, and I knew that. But he was kind, honest, loyal. There couldn't be anything dark enough to justify what she was doing. Back at the hospital, I found Nurse Morgan waiting for me. "Mrs. Cooper," she said carefully, "we ran a second round of tests." Something in her tone made my stomach drop. "What did you find?" She looked at me with worry. "There are traces of toxins in your son's blood." "Not natural. We're running a toxicology screen to confirm." I felt the world tilt beneath my feet. "Toxins? You mean poison?" She nodded slowly. "It looks that way." I sank into the nearest chair, my pulse pounding in my ears. Claire hadn't just neglected him, she'd poisoned him. And now I wasn't just a grieving mother. I was a mother hunting for the truth. I sat in silence, staring at the tiled hospital floor, my mind spinning faster than I could. Control, poison, the word kept echoing inside my head, like a nightmare. I couldn't wake from my Daniel, my only son. Someone had done this to him, and that someone was the woman who had promised to love and protect him. By evening, I was pacing the hospital hallway like a restless spirit. Every beep of the ICU monitor made my heart skip. I needed proof, something undeniable. I knew confronting Claire again wouldn't help. She was too clever, too calm. But if there were toxins in his system, there had to be a source. I went to see Nurse Morgan again. "Please," I begged. "Can you find out what kind of toxin it is?" She hesitated, looking around before lowering her voice. "We shouldn't share this until the results are official, but it looks like ethylene glycol." I frowned. "What is that?" "It's found in antifreeze," she explained. "Colorless, sweet-tasting, but deadly. Causes kidney failure and metabolic collapse if ingested." My blood ran cold. Antifreeze? It didn't make sense, unless... My memory snapped to the video again. The drink. The one Claire handed Daniel with that bright, fake smile. She'd poisoned him with it. I felt sick to my stomach. My legs almost gave way, and I grabbed the wall to steady myself. I couldn't tell the police yet, not without solid evidence. But I could make sure Claire didn't hurt anyone else. That night, I went back to Daniel's apartment. His keys were still in my purse, from when I'd found his emergency contact information earlier. The apartment was spotless, almost unnaturally so. The faint scent of bleach hung in the air. I walked into the kitchen and opened the trash bin. Empty, not a single piece of garbage. My eyes went to the sink. A wine glass stood alone, washed, sparkling clean. Then I noticed the pantry door slightly ajar. Inside, everything looked organized, until I saw a bottle of windshield cleaner half hidden behind a box of cereal. My heart stopped. I picked it up and read the label. Contains ethylene glycol. That was it. The proof. Just then the front door creaked open. My heart jumped. I turned off the light and hid behind the wall. Footsteps echoed through the apartment. Slow, cautious, deliberate. Then I heard her voice. "Claire." She walked into the kitchen, muttering to herself, and opened the fridge. "Still cold," she whispered. "They'll never trace it back to me." My blood boiled. I stepped out from the shadows. "So you admit it?" She froze, her eyes widening. "Mrs. Cooper, what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," I said, holding up the bottle. "This is what you used, isn't it?" Her face turned white. For a second, she looked like she might run. But then she smiled, a cold, dangerous smile. "You shouldn't have come here," she said quietly. "You don't know what you're getting into. Tell me why, Claire." "Why him?" I demanded. "What did my son ever do to deserve this?" She stared at me for a long moment, then whispered, "He betrayed me, and I don't forgive betrayal." Before I could respond, she grabbed her bag and bolted out the door. I chased after her, but by the time I reached the parking lot, she was gone, swallowed by the night. I stood there trembling, clutching that toxic bottle in my hands, knowing the truth. My son was poisoned by the woman he trusted most. But I wasn't going to stop until justice was done. What I didn't know was that Daniel had one more secret left to tell. The next morning, I barely recognized my own reflection in the mirror. My eyes were red, my face pale, but my resolve had hardened. I was no longer the grieving mother, sitting helplessly beside her son's hospital bed. I was a woman on a mission. I called the local police and reported everything. The poisoning, the evidence, the antifreeze bottle, even the video from Claire's party. An officer named Detective Harris met me at the hospital later that day. His calm voice carried the weight of experience. "Mrs. Cooper, we'll investigate this immediately. Can you hand over the bottle and the video?" "Yes," I said, handing him my phone and the bottle sealed in a plastic bag. "Please, make her pay." He nodded solemnly. "We'll test this for fingerprints and chemical residue. If it matches your son's toxicology report, we'll have enough to bring her in." I felt a flicker of hope. Finally, the truth was on its way out. I went back into Daniel's room, holding his hand. "Justice is coming, sweetheart. Just hang on a little longer." Hours passed in uneasy silence. I dozed off in the chair beside him, my head resting on my arm. I woke up to the sound of soft beeping, slower, weaker. I jolted upright. His oxygen levels were dropping. Nurses rushed in, and the doctor followed seconds later. They worked quickly, adjusting tubes and medication. I backed away, my heart thundering. Then as I stood there praying, his hand twitched again. His eyes fluttered open slightly, just enough for me to see his gaze searching for mine. "Daniel, baby, can you hear me?" I whispered. He nodded weakly, his lips dry and trembling. "Mom." "I'm here," I said, tears spilling over. "I'm here, sweetheart." He tried to speak again. The words came out broken, whispered between gasps. "She wanted the insurance." I leaned closer. "What? What insurance?" "Life policy," he murmured, barely audible. "She said debts needed it." And then his eyes rolled back and the machines began to scream again. Doctors shouted orders as I stood frozen, every word echoing inside me. Life insurance, debts, poison. It all connected like a nightmare. Puzzle falling into place. Claire hadn't just done it out of rage or betrayal. She did it for money. Hours later, Detective Harris called. "Mrs. Cooper, we got the lab results. The antifreeze matches the toxin in your son's system. There are fingerprints on the bottle, hers." I exhaled shakily. "So you'll arrest her?" "We're issuing a warrant right now," he said. "We'll find her." But as the day turned into night, the detective called again. This time his tone was grim. "She's gone," he said. "She cleared out her apartment, withdrew her money, and disappeared before we arrived. We're tracking her credit cards, but it looks like she planned this." I gripped the phone tightly. "She won't get away." "She can't?" "Don't worry," he said. "People like her always make mistakes." I hung up and sat beside Daniel again, the weight of everything pressing on my chest. My son was fighting for his life, and the woman who tried to end it was out there, free. As I watched his face, pale and still, I whispered a promise. "I'll find her, Daniel. No matter where she runs, no matter what it takes, I'll find her." But the next morning, before I could even begin my search, something happened that changed everything. When I entered his room, the bed was empty. The machines were off, and the nurse was standing in the corner, crying. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then she looked at me and said the words that shattered my world. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Cooper. Your son, he didn't make it." The room spun around me and I collapsed to my knees, a scream trapped in my throat. But as I cried, one thought burned through my grief. stronger than the pain itself. Claire thought this was over, but it wasn't. The world around me fell silent. The sounds of the ICU faded. No beeping monitors, no voices, nothing but the echo of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. My son was gone. My beautiful boy who once filled every corner of my home with laughter and light was gone. I don't remember how long I stayed there, kneeling on that cold floor. Time lost all meaning. It was Nurse Morgan who finally helped me up and led me into a quiet room. He went peacefully, she whispered, her eyes glistening. But there was no peace in me, only rage, raw and consuming. That night, I sat alone in my car in the hospital parking lot, staring at the rain sliding down the windshield. I kept hearing his voice in my head. She wanted the insurance. Claire hadn't just stolen my son's life. She had stolen every ounce of happiness left in mine. I wiped my tears and made a vow under that stormy sky. I will bring her down, even if it's the last thing I do. The next day, I met with Detective Harris again. He looked weary but determined. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Cooper. We'll find her. We already have a lead. She was spotted heading south toward the Florida Keys." I clenched my fists. "Then that's where I'm going." He hesitated. "You can't take matters into your own hands. Let us handle this." I looked him dead in the eyes. "Detective, I sat by my son's bedside while she was sipping champagne on a yacht. Don't ask me to wait." He didn't stop me. Maybe he knew he couldn't. I drove for hours, the highway stretching endlessly toward the coast. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. At every stoplight, memories flashed. Daniel as a child, holding my hand on his first day of school, his laughter echoing through the house, and then the image of Claire's smug smile as she said, "He betrayed me." I reached the Keys at sunset. The sky burned orange and crimson, as if the world itself was on fire. I checked into a small motel near the marina and started asking questions. The receptionist mentioned a woman matching. Claire's description had rented a small boat 2 days ago. She'd paid in cash. "Did she say where she was going?" I asked. He shrugged. "Somewhere quiet," she said. "Somewhere no one would find her." That night, I sat by the window, watching the waves crash against the shore, my heart heavy but focused. I knew she was close. The ocean couldn't hide her forever. Then, just before midnight, I received a call from Detective Harris. His voice was tense. "Mrs. Cooper, we've tracked her card activity. She used it at a fuel dock about 10 miles from your location. She's on a boat heading toward one of the smaller islands." I grabbed my keys immediately. "I'm going after her." "Wait," he began, but I'd already hung up. The sea wind hit me hard as I drove toward the docks. My mind was made up. She could run to the ends of the earth, but she couldn't escape the truth, or me. When I arrived, the docks were dark and nearly deserted. I found a fisherman preparing to head out and offered him cash to take me. Within minutes, we were cutting through the black water, the only sound the growl of the engine and the pounding of my heart. As the first sliver of dawn appeared on the horizon, I saw it, a white yacht anchored near a lonely island, rocking gently in the waves. It was hers. I felt my pulse quicken. The hunt was over, but I had no idea that what I would find on that island would change everything I thought I knew about my son and about Claire. The sun was barely rising when we reached the edge of the small island. Pale light shimmered across the waves, glinting off the white hull of the yacht anchored near the shore. My pulse thundered in my chest. This was it, the moment I'd been waiting for. I told the fisherman to stay back. "I'll be fine," I whispered, even though my voice trembled. I climbed into the shallow water, my shoes sinking into the wet sand, and began walking toward the boat. Every sound, the waves, the wind, the cry of a seagull, felt amplified, heavy with tension. As I got closer, I saw movement on the deck. Claire. She was alone, her hair pulled back, wearing sunglasses despite the faint light. She didn't see me at first. She was pacing, holding her phone to her ear. I crouched behind a row of palm trees, listening. Her voice carried over the wind. "Yes, I transferred the money," she snapped. "I told you, it's done. He's gone. You got what you wanted, now leave me alone." I froze. "You got what you wanted?" Who was she talking to? She hung up and threw the phone onto the deck. That was my moment. I stepped out from the shadows and called out, "You can stop pretending now, Claire." She whipped around, her eyes wide behind her sunglasses. "You? How did you find me?" "I followed the trail you left," I said coldly, climbing onto the yacht. You really thought you could run forever? She backed away slowly, her expression torn between fear and fury. You shouldn't have come here, Mrs. Cooper. Oh, but I had to, I said. You killed my son. Her lips trembled, but then she shook her head. No, you don't understand. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. Then explain it, I shouted. He was poisoned, Claire. You handed him that drink. She turned away, gripping the edge of the boat as tears welled in her eyes. I didn't pour it, I swear. I thought it was just something to make him sick, not kill him. Her words hit me like a brick. You thought? She nodded, her voice breaking. It was supposed to scare him, not... She stopped, covering her mouth. Scare him? Why? What did you mean when you said he betrayed you? She stared at me for a long time. And when she finally spoke, her voice was cold and empty. Daniel wasn't who you thought he was. He wasn't innocent. He took money, dirty money, from someone he shouldn't have. And when they found out, they came to me. They said if I didn't help them, they'd kill us both. I felt the blood drain from my face. What are you saying? She looked straight at me. He made a deal with men who laundered money through his company. He thought he could get away with it, but when the truth came out, he begged me to help. I told him to confess. He refused. He said the insurance money would fix everything. He even forged my signature on the policy. I stumbled back, the deck spinning beneath my feet. No, that can't be true. But she nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks. I loved him, Mrs. Cooper, but he dragged us both into something dark. I just wanted out. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The waves slapped against the side of the yacht, the sound rhythmic and cruel. Then I asked quietly, So you poisoned him? She shook her head frantically. No! I swear I didn't. Someone else switched the bottles at the party. I didn't know until it was too late. Who? I demanded. She hesitated, her eyes darting toward the horizon. His partner. The man he owed money to. I tried to warn him, but a gunshot ripped through the morning air. Claire's words died in her throat as she staggered backward, clutching her chest. Her eyes widened in shock. I screamed as she collapsed onto the deck, blood spreading across her white dress. From the trees on the shore, a figure stepped out, tall, wearing a black cap, a gun glinting in his hand. He pointed it at me. Stay where you are, Mrs. Cooper, he said calmly. This doesn't concern you. But it did. It concerned me more than he could ever imagine. The man's voice was smooth, too calm for what had just happened. My heart pounded so violently I could hear it echo in my ears. Claire lay motionless, her eyes open but lifeless, the morning light glinting off the tears that still clung to her lashes. I raised my hand slowly. Who are you? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He stepped closer, the gun steady in his hand. Let's just say I'm the man your son owed a great deal of money to. My stomach twisted. You killed her. You killed Claire! He smirked. She talked too much. And you, Mrs. Cooper, came here looking for answers that should have stayed buried. I could barely breathe. The air felt thick, heavy with salt and fear. What did Daniel ever do to deserve this? I asked. He made promises he couldn't keep, the man replied coolly. He thought he could use my money, flip it through his company, and return it before I noticed. But I always notice. He took another step toward me. I backed away until my spine hit the yacht's railing. There was nowhere to run. Please, I said softly. You've already taken everything from me. My son's gone. Claire's gone. Just let me leave. He tilted his head. I can't do that. You know too much. That's when something shifted inside me. Fear gave way to fury. I wasn't going to die on that boat. Not without fighting. My eyes darted toward the deck where Claire's phone had fallen earlier. It was just a few feet away. If I could just reach it, maybe I could send a message, a call, anything. He took another step, lowering the gun slightly as if savoring my terror. I used that moment. I kicked over a metal ice bucket that had been sitting beside me. It clanged loudly against the deck, startling him just enough for me to dive sideways and grab the phone. Drop it, he barked. I hit the screen, praying there was still a signal. My thumb pressed the emergency call button as he lunged forward. The gun fired, once, twice, and splinters of wood exploded beside me. I screamed, rolling behind a table as the boat rocked violently. The phone slipped from my hand and slid across the deck toward the edge. I crawled desperately after it. Another shot whistled past me, so close I could feel the air shift. Then, a voice shouted from the water. Police! Drop your weapon. I froze. The man turned, startled. Several boats had surrounded us, red and blue lights flashing against the waves. Someone must have traced my earlier call from the motel. The man cursed and fired wildly toward the officers. A burst of gunfire answered him. He staggered backward, clutching his shoulder, then tumbled over the side of the yacht into the sea. I sat there trembling, unable to move. My body shook uncontrollably as officers climbed aboard, shouting commands and clearing the deck. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" one of them asked, kneeling beside me. I don't know," I stammered, my voice breaking. My son is gone." He nodded grimly. "We know. We've been investigating this case for months. You just helped us catch the man responsible." As they led me off the yacht, I looked back one last time. Claire's body lay still, her hair fluttering in the breeze. For all her sins, she was as much a victim as Daniel. When I reached the shore, the sun had fully risen, painting the sea in gold. But all I felt was emptiness. That night, as I sat alone in a hotel room, the detective came in. "Mrs. Cooper," he said quietly, "there's something you should see." He handed me a small envelope, sealed and marked with Daniel's handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter. "Mom, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't fix what I broke. I never meant to hurt you or anyone. I just wanted to protect my family. If things go wrong, please remember, I love you, always." Tears blurred the words as I pressed the paper to my chest. Daniel had made mistakes, grave ones, but in the end, he was still my son, and I would carry his memory for the rest of my life. I stared out at the sea, whispering to the wind, "Rest now, my boy. I forgive you." As the waves whispered back, I realized something profound. Forgiveness doesn't erase pain, but it frees the soul from drowning in it. And that night, for the first time in months, I slept without nightmares. The next morning I woke up to silence. No machines beeping, no cries of panic, no crashing waves, just a soft hum of peace through the open window. I sat up slowly, the letter still clutched in my hands. Daniel's words had followed me into my dreams, echoing through every breath I took. "I love you, always." The police had taken my full statement, and the man who shot, Claire, had been confirmed dead, drowned before they could pull him from the water. The case was over, at least on paper. But emotionally, my war was still raging inside. I walked down to the beach later that morning, barefoot, the cool sand pressing gently against my feet. The sea looked calm now, innocent even, hiding the chaos it had witnessed just hours before. In my pocket, I carried two things: Daniel's letter and a small silver locket that once belonged to him as a child. I knelt by the water's edge and whispered, "You were flawed, my son, but you were mine, and that's all that ever mattered." The tide crept up slowly, touching my fingers as I placed the locket into the surf. It glimmered once before disappearing beneath the water. A strange calm settled over me, the kind that comes not from forgetting, but from finally letting go. As I stood there, the detective who had helped me approached from behind. "Mrs. Cooper," he said softly, "there's something I think you should know." I turned to face him. "What is it?" He held out a small USB drive. "We found this in your son's hospital locker. It looks like a video file." I hesitated, my fingers trembling as I took it. "What's on it?" "We don't know," he said. "Maybe you should be the one to find out." That night, I plugged the drive into my laptop. The screen flickered, then came to life. Daniel appeared, pale, weak, lying in a hospital bed. He looked straight into the camera and spoke softly. "Mom, I don't know if you'll ever see this, but if you do, please listen carefully. What happened wasn't all Claire's fault. I got greedy. I thought I could control things, fix them. But I was wrong. She tried to stop me. The people I worked with, they were dangerous. She didn't know how deep I was in. Please don't hate her. She only did what she thought would save us." He paused, coughing hard, struggling for breath. "If I don't make it, promise me one thing. Don't let anger be the only thing that keeps you alive. You've always taught me that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means freedom. Mom, forgive me. I love you." The video ended there, but the silence that followed was deafening. My tears fell freely. For the first time, I saw the truth clearly. Claire was broken. Yes, but not entirely evil. She had been trapped in the same nightmare as Daniel, and both of them had paid the ultimate price. Days later, I attended a small memorial by the sea. I placed flowers for both of them, white lilies for Daniel, and a single red rose for Claire. People stared, maybe judging, maybe wondering how I could forgive her. But I didn't care. I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for peace. When the ceremony ended, I walked back to my car, the sun setting behind me in shades of gold and crimson. The world felt quiet again, but not empty, just healed. As I started the engine, I looked into the rearview mirror and whispered, "Goodbye, my loves." Then I smiled through my tears and said softly, "And to everyone watching, remember this. Life will break you, betray you, and test you in ways you never expect. But forgiveness, real forgiveness, isn't weakness. It's strength. Because letting go doesn't mean losing love. It means learning how to carry it without pain." The camera would fade out there, the waves in the background, the sound of the sea merging with soft piano music. And as always, the outro plays. Thank you for watching this story on Tales by Granny. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of courage, truth, and resilience. Remember, every ending is a chance for a new beginning.